And good evening. We're here today with another Jazz Matters podcast, and with our guest, Mr. Otis Gould, percussionist, educator, producer, arranger, writer, and he's got so many things. I think I'll probably have to let him finish the list. But for the most part, Mr. Otis Gould is here with us. And what we want you to do before we get started is to go ahead and go to the website, which is yesjazzmatters.org, and go to the Jazz Matters page. And we have, of course, we are a 501c3, and we do have to, we take donations. We also have a Jazz Matters store which you can purchase items from, all types of items. As a matter of fact, like this one, let me see if you can see this right here. I couldn't. Okay, this T-shirt, Jazz Matters, got the logo and all that good stuff, but they got a lot of other stuff on there too. Go there and check it out and see what we're all about. And right now, we'll go ahead and one more thing, I want you to like us and subscribe to us. Also, we're going to go ahead and get started. And Otis, it's been a while, but let everybody know who you are, for all those who don't, and how you got started in this business, where you're from, and as far as the what you're working on now. So that's a lot. So you got a long time to wrap.
All right. Well, so how much time I got?
Okay.
Well,
I lost your volume for some reason.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Say again?
Can you hear me?
Okay, I got you now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know what happened. I switched to, okay. Is it good?
There you go.
All right. Well, like you said, I'm Otis Gould. I'm originally from Chicago, migrated south around 1980. But as far as playing is concerned, it's kind of like a gift that I have. I've never had any really formal training as a percussionist. I got my first drum for my 10th birthday. I remember playing out in the churchyard behind the house. I saw my father trying to sneak the drum in the house. So it's a conga. And he bought it for me because I was always beating on furniture all around the house. I walked through the house, beating on the refrigerator, sitting at the table. They holler at me for beating on the table, while we eating and stuff. So for my 10th birthday, he bought me a conga, and I could play it then. So I have no idea when I learned to play. And I think the first rhythm I actually played was wah wah ko. And I didn't learn that until recently, but that's what the rhythm was.
Yeah, can you explain to the people exactly what that is? Because most,
Oh, well, wah wah ko is a Cuban rhythm. I guess it's actually interpreted as an African rhythm that's been interpreted as by congas, by Cubans, to my understanding. And it's it's just a basic pattern, it's wah wah ko. It's a doom 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 doom. Doom, 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 doom. That's the basic pattern of it. And that was just something natural for me to play at the time. So we would play in the alleys and stuff in Chicago, here in the South, y'all don't know about alleys, but, we would play in the alleys until the police came and run us off. But like I said, I was playing there, and I played in Chicago, got my first drum at 10. And when I was able to go to, I lived within walking distance of the beach. So there was a place in the beach, and this is probably for Chicago people will be more relevant. But there was a place on the beach called The Point, where all the drummers would kind of congregate, and we would play, until late in the night. All the guys would play. So I would go out to the Point and play, and that's where most of the guys plays. I don't know if you ever heard of the Sun Drummers. That's where they originated. They would be out there. A lot of guys play, some master drummers and some wannabe drummers would be there, but everybody was welcome. So that's where I kind of honed my skills. I went to DuSable High School, and again, that's in DuSable, that's in Chicago, and never had the opportunity to actually study under Walter Diet, who was a famous band director. He taught everybody, Nat King Cole, all the cats who came out of Chicago will have something to say about Walter Diet. But unfortunately, I thought I was going to be an NBA star. So instead of being in the band room, I was in the gym. So if I had it to do over again, I think I'd do it a little differently. But so I did that, you know, play all through high school just as a hobby, not really trying to be professional or anything. I went to Southern Illinois University, and while at Southern Illinois, there was a couple of bands that were on there playing, and they had a couple of bands with conga players, and I joined one of the bands, you know, just started playing. It's called the Tammy People, and we played for all occasions all around Southern Illinois and frat parties and things like that at school. Played for the Kappa Carnival, which was a big thing around that area, around the early, late 60s, around 67 to 71 was my era there. And we played for them, and I just kind of, again, not taking it very seriously. I just playing, just to be playing, just doing something, having some little cash money on campus. Actually, I stayed there 4 years, got my degree in education, you know, so I left there, came to Chicago, started teaching. My degree was in elementary education, so I was teaching elementary school, playing with a lot of bands around Chicago. I played with a band called We the People. Again, this is all Chicago stuff. I guess if anybody from Chicago was listening, they would know. And from there, the bass player in that group was called Charlie Beadle, and he introduced me to Phil Coran. This probably was the most important thing about my most important era of my education, I guess, as a drummer. Phil Coran, for those who don't know, is actually the guy who any progressive musician in Chicago eventually had something to do with him. As a matter of fact, the first Phoenix Horns that came out of Chicago came out of Phil Coran's band, and the Phoenix Horns were the Earth, Wind, and Fire horn section. Maurice White, who played the kalimba, played he played what Phil Coran called the Frankie phone, but Maurice White called it the kalimba. It was the thumb piano, and that's where Maurice White got that from Phil Coran. So Google Phil Coran. I mean, there's a lot that you can learn about Phil Coran, and I can't tell you everything, but I have the utmost respect for him, and to this day, the opportunity I had to be with him, you know, is still has a heavy impact on my life, because he not only taught music, he taught life. Let me give you an example.
Now, that's a very good thing to let people know that the two have to coexist in the same harmonic structure. For those who are, you know, musicians that are doing it professionally and so forth, they can meld the two. But I'm glad you brought the point up, you know, because it does teach you a lot about life and how to maneuver. But go ahead and finish up your statement.
Yeah, and if I'm rambling, just stop me, you know, because
I mean, but that's what I was saying. You got the rambling hour here.
Okay, yeah. But this is some very interesting, and this is what happened. The things like, you know, you'd be in a rehearsal, we'd be rehearsing music, you know, and something would happen. He'd just stop, and he'd just go off on, you know, on a tangent of, you know, telling you why this is important, why you need to play this way. And for the musicians out there, most of the horn players had a problem with Phil Coran because they wanted to play changes, different changes. And Phil Coran was a modal player. He only played in modes, Aeolian mode, all of his things were in specific modes. So you had to be disciplined to stay in that mode. And, you know, so we'd have those kind of conversations. But what impacted me about him the most with my playing was the fact that I was having a problem with a rhythm. He played some out rhythms, and I think this rhythm was like, this song was in like 11, 11-4 or something like that, 11-8. And I was struggling, and I was struggling, and I was struggling. And, you know, I asked Phil for help. You know, I said, Phil said, you know, he played all the instruments but percussion. He said, son, I don't play your instruments, so I really can't help you, you know. But what he told me something that changed my life. He told me that the reason I could not play this rhythm was because I ate meat. And I said, damn. You know, so he told me so. And everybody else in the band was vegetarians, by the way. You know, most of everybody, you know, we was all, everything was high life, you know, good living. So he told me that, you know, and I said, wow, he gonna challenge me on that level. You know, I gotta accept the challenge. So I kind of right there, cold turkey, quit eating meat. And, you know, it's kind of hard at first, you know, but, you know, cause, you know, I guess those vegetarians know that, you know, you just can't, you know, it's not, life, I mean, the community is not set up for vegetarians. You know, you have to make an effort, you know. So I kind of struggled with that, but I did that. And after about a month, I saw what he was talking about. It was like a lead overcoat had been taken off of me. And I was kind of, you know, free. So I said, you know, and to this day, I've not eaten meat since that day. You know, so like I said, that's why I say the life impact that it had on me.
Right.
He does things by seasons, you know. One of the things he talked about was that spring, you know, is the time of growth. You know, everything accumulates so that the energy for growth to happen. So then he said that if you want to start a new process or you want to start a new adventure, do it in the spring. And, you know, if you want it to really, you know, flourish. And I used that information as my wedding date. So I got married on the first day of spring. You know,
so you made sure you hung in there, right?
Yeah. So I make sure I was trying to do it right. You know, but it was basically because of all the little things that he would say, you know, in our rehearsal sessions. They were really impactful. And I really can't go back and say everything, but research Phil Coran. But
so he seemed to be a very metaphysical type of person where, you know, the real meditative spirit. You know,
yeah, exactly. And he was a cornet player in Sunrise Orchestra.
Okay, yeah, it's a lot of Sunrise players were definitely on another meditative plane. You know, so that's it. So
And
go ahead.
yeah, but so, and if you again, I keep making these references to Chicago, but the AACM, Association for Advancement of Creative Musicians, started in Chicago. He was one of the original founders.
Okay.
And that's Richard Muhal, Abrams, you know, a lot of cats that in the AACM. That's something else that you can Google. That kind of started through him. I made myself some notes, so I'm trying to look at them.
Right.
But probably
just put them in front of you. It'd be all right.
Yeah, probably the most important thing in my career. Like I said, I never had formal teaching, but my time with Phil Coran was probably the most impactful for me as far as a musician and as far as a human being is concerned.
But you know, as far as that goes, it seems like the better players, in my opinion, that come up in situations where they have a natural gift to adapt to the music and channel the music. They have a different. There's a different sound to what they do. I mean, let's take people like George Benson. Those people didn't come up necessarily with a formal musical training. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of them that we hear, they don't have that ability to, let's say, read everything that's written. Let's say it like that. When you do have some guys that, you know, were taught in school from day one all the way through college and so forth, they're great fundamentally as far as notation maybe and transcription. But when it comes to what a person feels, they seem to lack in that. A lot of them do, not all of them, of course, but a lot of them I found like that. So I never really uh, talk against people who haven't been formally trained. I would rather embrace those people, you know, simply because I know that they have that spiritual connection with sound, and basically the whole uh, uh, world is all channeled through vibration anyway. You know what I'm saying? And those people can adapt, and they have something different. That's the bottom line. And that's why people hire people a lot of times. It's because of what they heard, not necessarily their academic background. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, yeah.
So, but go ahead and finish up.
Yeah, and you brought, again, I'm going back to another reference with Phil Coran, because that was one of the things that he used to do. All the rehearsals with the horn players, he would start by doing what's called, and everybody would do it, what's called long tones.
Right.
So we just sit there and take one note, pick one note, and just play that note for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever it was until the rehearsal formally started. So everybody would sit down playing long notes, and then he explained it, what the process was, and why were you doing these long tones. And what it is that he has a thing that's called the point, where you can have a saxophone player that play maybe an E flat. He'll play Coltrane will play an E flat, but then another not so prominent saxophone player will play that same E flat. But Coltrane's E flat would be kind of different than the other guy, because he had because of his training, he had zeroed in. You get closer and closer and closer to that point that he says. And that's what really makes an artist stand out, is that when they can express from the point, when they have enough control over the note that they can get. I don't want to get too esoteric, but they can get on the outside, they can remove all of the stuff from the outside, those overtones or whatever it is, and just play the pure tone. Right. And he said, when you hear a person playing an instrument and they do something special, rather than whatever other people are doing, it's because they have access to that point. They have practiced and practiced to the point where, wow, that's interesting. But they have practiced and practiced to the point where there's no doubt in their mind about where that note is and what that note should do. So, and that's just one of his concepts. That's one of his lectures, so.
That's like saying it's straight, no chasing.
Mm-hmm.
Like Thelonious Monk, straight, no chasing.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you also did some work with Shallites, right?
Yeah, I was getting ready to get to that, because unfortunately, my tour, I'm telling you all of this stuff I got from Phil Coran, but I got it in about a 6-month period. Okay. Because I was teaching, in the summer. I think I started with him in the summer. I can't remember the year, but we are out. School is out for the summer, so I was working and rehearsing with Phil for the summer, and I played with him all the way through October. And in October, I got a call from a friend of mine who I was telling you about. I played with this band in high school, in college, the Tammy people. He called me. He was playing with the Shallites, and they were in Detroit. And he called me one day. I had come home from school. I had a rough day at school. I was teaching in one of the projects areas in Chicago, and I love teaching, love kids, love doing what I was doing, but it was a challenge. And I came home one day. It was a dreary October day. I was looking out the window and trying to figure out, what am I going to do? I can't keep fighting these. I can't keep fighting this all the time, So what happened was, this guy gave me a call. It was around 4:00. They were in Detroit at the 20 Grand. And he said, we lost our percussionist. If you can get up here tonight, I'm sure you can get the gig. This was around 4:00. Next thing I knew, I don't know how I got there. Next thing I knew, I was in Detroit at the 20 Grand that evening, getting ready to hit. And I went up and played with the band. It's a band called Dynamic Sounds Orchestra, which I'm going to talk to you about a little bit later. But I got up there and did the audition, played. Everybody loved me and said it was great. It was a great fit. And, I went and met with Marshall and Eugene, who were the Shallites. And they wanted me to start working that day. This was a Friday. But I told him, as bad as I wanted this gig, I had committed to a gig with Phil Coran that Saturday in Valparaiso. and I couldn't let them down. I couldn't just not do the gig. So, you know, even at the risk of losing that gig, I said, you know, I'll come back, you know, but I got to go back to Chicago. And I got to do this gig with Phil Coran and let them know that I'm leaving. So, you know, so they understood. I think they appreciated the fact, you know, that I did that. So I left there and went back, did the gig with Phil Coran. I'm not really proud of this, but I never even went back to school to quit. I just never showed up.
You just didn't go back.
I just didn't go back. You know, I left my last check, everything. I didn't pick up the check or anything. I just left, you know, and so much thing happened. I mean, it's like I got caught up in a whirlwind because I left there and went back to Detroit. We finished that gig. We went to Houston, did that gig, then went to England for like a month. And things was like happening so fast that I didn't even think about, you know, the fact that I had a paycheck, one final paycheck, and, you know, business that I didn't take care of with. But anyway, playing with the Shylights, that was, whew, that was a fun gig, you know, just to put it mildly.
How long was that? How long were you with them? How long did you play?
I played with them from about 7 years from let me see, when did I start? Yeah, this will tell me. Around 72 to 80. Around 72 to 80. And we, you know, we went all over the world with them, you know. Wasn't making a whole lot of money, but we were making good enough money. I didn't have bills, you know. Actually, I had an apartment for a while, and I realized that, you know, it's a strange feeling when you're gone for 2 months and you got mail rent money back, you know. So I figured, you know, I had my parents had a house and we had an apartment building. So I moved out and moved back in with my parents, you know. So that was cool, you know, because I wasn't ever there anyway. So, but doing that, you know, for first couple of 4 or 5 years, you know, I guess Eugene Record, who was the main producer, he was just kind of checking me out. But it was an honor. He invited me into the studio one day to work on a session, which I don't think at that point, nobody else in the band had been invited to do the studio sessions.
They just used the studio musicians, is what it was.
Yeah. So he invited me in, and, you know, I started playing, and that was the next phase of my career, recording. Man, I love recording. And that was something that I kind of got into. I'll give you a little aside about it, because I was playing only percussion then, congas, but I really wanted to be a drummer, a trap set drummer, because I was around so many great drummers, Quentin Joseph, Morris Jennings, all of these are Chicago people. Chicago people will know. Donnie Hagen, lots of guys, you know, but I was always wanting to play drums because those guys were so solid in the pocket, you know. So, but I could never get a job. So I bought a drum set and started practicing, you know, but I could never get a gig because everybody knew me as a conga player. And I couldn't get gigs as a drummer. So I'm gonna fess up here for a second. When I moved to Atlanta, I didn't tell anybody here that I was a conga player. I was a percussionist. I introduced myself as a drummer because I wanted to be, you know, I wanted to play drums, you know. And fortunately, my wife, well, let me back up. I moved to Atlanta chasing a woman who eventually became my wife. But I met her in Chicago. But, you know, like I said, her job moved her to Atlanta about a week after I met her. But we kept in touch, and the Shylights were on tour a lot in the South, so we'd be in the South a lot. So we kind of kept in touch. And, you know, eventually we got married. You know, I moved to Atlanta and we got married. But she was associated with, her friends were some guys who were associated with Just Us Theater. And so when I came here this is kind of strange when I look back on it. But when I came here introducing myself as a drummer, I introduced myself to them as a drummer, not a percussionist. And they had a show coming up called, which was Ain't Misbehavin. which was a Broadway, Broadway show with a Broadway cast brought in from New York to do the show. And, so I told him I was a drummer, I could do the show. But let me back up a minute. When I was in wanting to play drums and I couldn't get a gig as a drummer, what I did was bought a lot of books, technique books, and that taught me how to read. And that helped me a lot in reading charts, so I love reading charts, especially drum charts and interpreting charts. But, my chops on reading was really good at the time. So I went in and, did the show. This guy would, there was the choreographer. Man, I think I rambled too much, but anyway, I had to clean up this story. The choreographer for Ain't Misbehavin, when he got the gig, when they put that show together, he put together the choreography for the show, but he just got a flat fee for it. So so as the show went on, he didn't get any pay, when someone else picked up the show and, they leased it out from the leasing companies. So what he did was he went in and copyrighted his choreography. And I don't even know why I'm saying this, but he would sit in the back of the house, and if somebody did the show and they did his choreography, he'd stop the show and make them pay him.
Well, I mean, that's legit, because that's a person that really knows business. Right. Say it like that. That's the person that knows business.
Yeah. So the reason I say that is that his choreography, the way he could tell if you was using his choreography is that he had it written into the drum chart, so that the hits and the clicks, would come in the had to come in the drum chart. So if you were doing that, playing that drum chart and doing his moves, that let him know that you were doing his choreography. And what was interesting is that the William Foster McDaniel, who was the musical director, he said, "Man, you are the only drummer that this choreographer has not cursed out, because he didn't care what you was playing, you had to do those hits, because that was his, and he would give all the drummers a lot of trouble." So that was a big compliment for me. He said that, you're the only drummer that's ever done this show that he hadn't cursed out. So, but I've got a ton of method books, that even now when I just don't have any inspiration for practice, I just go through stick control or, just play that stuff. So, but anyway.
As far, you were talking about the hits and everything through the choreography. Well, that's kind of the same way people, when they do big band music. When a drummer comes in and let's say that there's not necessarily a chart for the drummer, and he's setting in, maybe for some reason he had to come in very quick or something. They would always give him the horn charts.
Exactly.
Because that's where all the hits are. Exactly. As long as he can play the horn charts, then he got the gig pretty much.
Yeah. And that's happened a lot, because a lot of times there weren't drum charts.
Right.
He'd give me a trumpet chart,
There it is.
Because the trumpet would have the hits, so he just said, play this, play this. Sometimes he'll give me a bass chart, so, I can follow along with the bass, but mostly the horn licks, so.
Right.
And the fact that I was an accomplished reader at the time helped me an awful lot doing that. But getting back to the Shylights, so like I played with them. Eugene brought me in the studio and let me play, and I worked on a couple of his projects. I eventually I recorded on about 6 or 7 of the later Shylights albums. I recorded with the Impressions. I recorded with the Dales, because those were Eugene Record produced them. Eugene Record was the lead singer of the Shylights, and he also produced. He wrote all the Shylights music, and he was also writing and producing for other people. Barbara Acklin, Love Makes a Woman, things like that. Actually, the Young Hoke Trio, Strut, something, I think Strut was Sissy Strut, I think it is. He wrote that tune as well. But Eugene was a very deep cat.
I thought Sissy Strut was the Beaters.
Was that, well, not that, well, what was this Young Hope? He did something, Young Hope Trio, whatever their hit was. And it was an instrumental, but he wrote
Right.
it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it's some kind of strut. I'm not sure of the exact.
It was
title.
a Soulful Strut.
Soulful Strut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe.
Soulful Strut was the Young Hope Trio.
Yeah. Okay.
Put them on the map.
Thank you. Yeah, but that just as an aside, that was written by Eugene Record.
Right.
But interesting thing was in the studio. I got to being in the studio is just a whole nother feeling. But I got to the point where I had access, or I couldn't just walk in anybody's studio, but they knew me. I could just be around, driving around. I could pull up and go in the studio. Maybe I get a tambourine section or something,
Right.
and just play it, because that was the time when record companies were putting money up front, so they had budget, so
right.
they'd have Heineken, everything, in the studio, we've been there at night just playing, just having a ball.
Yeah.
And I found my next poignant moment in playing, because I was playing, I was having a ball playing. And, we finished recording, I come in the studio and listen. And the producer's in there listening, and he'll look at everybody and say, well, what do you think? And I would always say, man, I think I could do better. I could do another track better. And I did that a couple of times. And I think it was Quentin Joseph, they called him Zob, or Morris Jennings. Both of them played on Curtis Mayfield's original Superfly album. They pulled me to the side. They said, hey, man, if the producer's happy, don't say nothing. So I said, okay, so I I got that, and I got a lot of stuff from them. I told them, that I wanted to play drum set. And another thing he told me is that I asked Morris Jennings, I said, how can you help me to be a better drummer? He said, learn everything. So he mean, don't just play R&B, jazz, or anything. Learn everything. So and that helped me a lot, because I ended up playing bar mitzvahs and stuff, all kind of things. Jesus said, don't pigeonhole yourself as one kind of drummer. So that was helpful. And
that was correct, because I even had the same thing, when I was out on the road. Alex Acuna told me the same thing, and he was that way. Alex would learn everything. I mean, all types of music. Everything from gospel to funk, jazz, whatever. Alex was basically a rehearsaholic. He never a dull moment when he rehearsed, practiced, and he just it was one of those kind of things where I said, this guy is doing the same thing I would do. I also found out, that later that Harvey Mason did the same thing. He never pigeonholed himself. And as a musician, that's the same with myself. I never pigeonholed myself into one category of music. Although a lot of people, when I first got to Atlanta, they thought I primarily just a jazz player. That was it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, no, I can do whatever you want me to do. And one of the reasons why they did that was because when I came here, I wasn't playing in the tradition of most of the people from this area, because I had done work with my concept of funk was like I had worked with Weather Report, for instance. That was my concept of funk. You know what I'm saying? I never did get into the percussive thumb thing because I didn't feel like that was something that it appealed to me. You know what I mean? But at the same time, when I came down to play and to get known in the city, I was using a fretless bass, and nobody was playing R&B on a fretless bass at the time. You see what I'm saying? And I'm like, everybody said, well, you got to get a fretted bass because it sounds like you're playing jazz. You know what I'm saying? so I, of course, I fought it for a while, but then I decided to go ahead and get the frettedness and everything. But for the most part, learning all the different concepts of music is so important if you want to survive in this arena. You have to perform as if whoever comes out to see you, they don't know you do this music, but they don't know you do other things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're playing it well, that's how they should appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So when they see you in another environment, then they go, "Oh, you do this," you know. It's kind of interesting, you know, to see the reactions of a lot of people doing stuff like that. But studio-wise, you can get, like you said, you can get a lot of sessions out of that kind of out of that concept of just playing the music the way the producers want it. That's the biggest thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of, I know you're working on some stuff right now from a friend of ours, Mr. Joe Jennings.
Right.
And you're doing some stuff for him because he's writing like I guess it's a musical kind of thing about Paul Robeson.
Paul Robeson, yeah.
Yeah, so that should be pretty interesting, you know?
Yeah,
Can you tell us a little bit about it? Because you may not, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil Joe's fire, but yeah, it's interesting in that Joe is probably, this is a great compliment actually, but Joe is probably the closest person that I've come to Phil Coran, you know, because Joe, you know, I also work with his big band, Joe Jennings' big band, and his understanding, you know, of music, he didn't get as deep sometimes as Phil does, but you know, Joe's a deep guy, you know, he's a great guy, and I'm learning a lot from him, just learning a lot about him just from working on this project, you know, because I'm also, you know, I'm an educator, trained educator, so I know how to teach, but also I know how to learn, because if I know how to teach, I have to know how to learn. So I'm teaching my stuff myself. I taught myself drums, you know, and everything like that. So now I'm actually teaching myself. I won't try to do it now, but piano and theory, you know, and chords, you know, and I play these little 1-4-5 chords and things like that. But then I listened to this project that Joe's doing. I said, damn, I don't know that chord, you know. I can't play that, you know. So that's a whole nother level. That you asked me what I'm working on. That's kind of what I'm working on now with COVID. You know, I just can't sit in here and do nothing. So I guess you see my little toys back here. I got my electronic drum sets. I got my I don't know if you can see my congas back there.
Oh yeah, I see the congas.
Yeah, let me see, get out of the way. Yeah, so that's can't move. Anyway. Anyway, this is my little home studio, and that I'm really learning. I'm learning a program called Logic that I am thoroughly locked into right now. I think I probably need to enroll in Georgia Tech or something, because there is so much. I do a lot with Logic, but I'm probably about 5 to 10% of what that program can do. So
well, you know what? Most of the people that get recording software like that, because I was using Pro Tools, and I got so involved in it. You have to be very careful because it is habit forming, and you can lose a lot of sleep dealing with those programs. You know what I'm saying? And then
trust me, I know.
And then you find yourself, if you're going to be I mean, literally losing sleep. I mean, you're up for hours. If you were normally sleeping at least 6 hours a day or a night, by the time you get into that software, all that's out the window. You know, those 6 hours are in there dealing with that software and stuff. And but I learned a lesson from doing that. Is that, you know, the best thing to do is track what you do, you know, to a point. In other words, by me being a bass player, I would put down keypads maybe, and drum, and basically a scratch drum pad, right? And I put those 2 tracks in, put my bass track in, and if I get time, I'll do a melody or something like that. And I usually get other people, because my tracking was all live instruments, so I didn't do MIDI. So I had a friend that I was working with, a trombone player, that would come in and do all the horn arrangements. And but we would still be putting in a lot of hours, even if it was daylight hours, because I would have to get up early in the morning, and we would run through the sessions, but I had to cut it off, by about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon because I had a gig to go to. I was working down at Dante down the hatch, so I had to have some kind of time in between it, but it was consuming so much of my time. My advice is, I know how deep you can get into Logic, but just remember, what I'm saying, chill, when it comes to, when you notice that the clock, all of a sudden you look up at the clock and it's 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it's time to turn it loose. It's time to turn it loose. I've been there.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, that horse is already out the barn.
Oh my goodness!
I will be down here. It's like I don't have. Like I say, I'm retired now. I retired from the school system.
Right.
In '07. So I've been retired for a while. So like my clock is whatever I want it to be.
Yeah, your clock is upside down.
Yeah. So and I just work on inspiration. Some days my process is in the afternoons I watch the news. I want to keep up. I watch evening news and maybe an hour MSNBC or something like that. And by then it's like 8 o'clock. And that's when I finally come down in my studio and start to work.
Oh, okay.
Nothing else to work. So I don't even start till like 8 or 9 o'clock, sometimes, Lately I've been doing daytime stuff, but for my inspiration, I just get out here at night, I'm in my basement and, fortunately, I don't disturb my wife too much, and, we're empty nesters, so there's nobody here but us. So, so I play till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, it just depends, some days I just say, stop, because it's 3 o'clock, even though I don't want to stop.
Right. Well, I have to do the same thing, man. Even today, I'm still playing at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm still playing and everything. Yeah. And I start way early. Like after we finish this session, I will definitely be practicing again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I wanted to ask you, what do you see? What do you think about the young musicians out there now that are doing, let's say, quote unquote jazz, but not necessarily in the tradition? They seem to be doing a little more R&B based rhythms. And how do you see the music moving forward? Jazz music. When we talk about jazz.
Yeah.
Are we basically shortchanging, the music?
Yeah. Well, I think it actually started with something that I don't know if you're familiar with the term acid jazz. Yeah. That's where they started using like hip hop beats and stuff over jazz chords. Under jazz chords and things like that. Kind of that movement. I think that movement kind of started there, but I think the way I see it is that you have to have. Let me see. How can I best say this? Because I don't want to sound arrogant. Some people claim that I'm arrogant. I don't want to be arrogant or anything, but you have to know, I'll say this and I'll just get it out the air. When I moved to Atlanta, I'm coming from Chicago, where cats were reading, cats were playing, I'm working with studio musicians. I get a call for a gig, even though I was just playing congas or whatever it was, you might get one rehearsal, or, because singers at that time, if you're working for a singer, they brought charts with them,
Right.
So, you come, you get maybe one rehearsal, maybe 2 rehearsals, then you gig, And I moved up to Atlanta, and I noticed that singers and things didn't do that. If you had a gig coming up, you almost had to rehearse like 2 weeks, for one night gig, and like that wouldn't happen, you know. So that's why I saw a lack of, you know, I wasn't a great musician, but I saw a lack of musicianship here, you know, because cats weren't doing that kind of thing. You know, they were, you know, except for Joe, you know, Joe was doing copywriting and things like that. But most of the cats, you know, I get a gig, you know, you got to rehearse 2 weeks for a one-night gig, you know, and that didn't make sense to me.
And what was weird about that, and I know exactly what you're talking about, a lot of the, like you said, a lot of the singers, but there are a lot of vocalists around that seem to have that ability to get gigs. And they would hire musicians, but realistically, the singers didn't really know the material themselves. So they practiced the material simply because of their lack of knowledge, you know what I'm saying, of the material. So they would draw everybody in while they're struggling with it. And then you got all these musicians. The biggest problem they had was nobody bought the music with them. You know, everybody assumed you knew what was happening, you know what I'm saying, or you knew this artist or something like that. And it got to that point. I understood where they were coming from, but I attributed that to their own, you know what I'm saying, that was their own lack of knowing really how to create and keep things going. Now, as far as a lot of the later, I noticed I get calls for gigs, and people don't even, people weren't even really rehearsing. They just call you, just show up. You know what I'm saying? So you weren't quite sure what you were going to have to do. You know, they just called you, you accepted, so they show up, you know.
And I love those kind of gigs.
Yes, that's what you call spontaneous combustion.
Because it makes you listen.
Oh, you know? You have
so
to.
It makes you listen. So I used to like that, you know, because I used to be going to a gig. She said, you know, I get a call for a gig, even here in Atlanta. And my wife would say, well, who you playing with? I say, I don't know. She say, what you playing? I say, I don't know. You know, but when we get there, and then it just happens, you know, so so stuff just happens. But that's because you have to have a level of mastery of your instrument, you know.
That's
so so everybody can't do that. But let me get back to your question, because I'm gonna put this out there about where music is now, and about commercialism in music. There's a formula that I work on. It's called like the 50% formula. Is that and it's not only applies to music, it applies to any of the arts, I think. But if you're doing something and you're doing it for an audience, the audience has got to be able to understand what you're doing approximately 50% of the time. Meaning that if they can predict what you're going to do 100% of the time, then they get bored. You know, if they can't predict anything that you're going to do, they get frustrated. So it's like a balance. It's like 50% of the time. So you have like when you have like people like Coltrane, like my wife, to this day, my wife thinks Coltrane is just noise, you know, but for people who know Coltrane, you know, that segment of the audience that know him, they are able to predict a little bit. You know, they can't predict him maybe 100% of the time, but somewhere around 40 to 60%. You know, they can feel it. But that's because they're in that school. You know, we're in the school of hip hop or R&B is just like 2/4, 2 and 4. You know, playing backbeat 2 and 4, 2 and 4. That's kind of simplistic, but there's an audience for that as well. You know. And this one guy told me when I first started trying to write music, he said, first thing you have to do is decide who's going to listen to this music. You know, you can't just, you know, because most people go in, they write what they want to hear, you know, all this extravagant stuff, you know, but who's going to buy it? You know, what's your audience? You know, so, and that's the template that I use, or that I think is being used, is that 50% of the time, you know, where is this audience? What do they want? You know, you know, if I'm playing a chord, if I'm playing just all night long, Some people like that. Some people will want that. A jazz aficionado would get bored really quickly, you know, and tune it completely out. So you kind of have to do that, you know, for where you are, for the set that you're playing, and that's why versatility comes in at, you know. So you know, I've been doing gigs, you know, even parties where we're playing something and you look out and you see the people aren't vibing to what you're doing. As a musician, you got to change. You got to do something, you know. So you have to find that, but you have to have the skill to do that, you know. I've been in situations in a band, and when I first started playing in Chicago, we started playing at a gig at this club. It was so bad, we just quit. Oh. And, in the middle of the gig, just told the owner, you know, just keep the money. We left because it just wasn't working. We weren't playing with each other, and the people wasn't feeling it, and, you know, and it wasn't gonna get any better. So we just quit, you know. But those are the kind of things. So when you ask about what music is today, for me, it's like who's, you know, when you say music, who's listening to it? What is it? You know, I like. My background is R&B. You know, I don't really have a jazz background. I like jazz, but, you know, and I probably frustrate Joe, you know, because even as a drummer, I'm what I call a pocket drummer on drum set, because I haven't been trained. You know, I know rudiments and stuff, and, you know, I can move around the set, but I don't really solo. You know, I can hold a pocket. You know, if you give me a pocket, you know, I can hold a pocket, any kind of groove. You know, I know different kind of, you know, genres to play in, but, you know, as far as stretching out, you know, twirling sticks and throwing sticks up and stuff like that, I don't do that. I'm just basically a pocket drummer, and which is good, you know.
Which is really good, because that's what keeps you working.
Right.
A drummer that can pocket whatever he's doing is one of those kind of drummers. Because I've worked with jazz drummers, swing drummers, for instance. That's all they do, and they have a pocket that they can do all this stuff in. And they're really, really good at it. But when they step outside of that, you may not want to be there with them. But I understand it. I saw a long time ago. I saw VSOP over there at the Fox, and Tony Williams was sitting in with George Benson, because they had, of course, you know, VSOP group and Ron Carter and all of them. And then the next act was George Benson. George had gotten really hot at that point, you know? Mm-hmm. And, but for whatever reason, George wanted Tony to play drums behind him. Mm-hmm. That was a mistake, you know what I'm saying? At that time, as great a drummer as Tony is, it was not where George wanted to be, because George was strictly into that 2 and 4.
Right.
And Tony, being the type of drummer he is, wasn't feeling it. That's just bottom line. He just was not feeling it. And George would keep looking back and put, you know, counting on it, stumping on his foot, you know, trying to get Tony to line up with him. You know, it was like, I was like, man, that's incredible. You know, I don't know why he did that, but, you know, hey, that's the way it was. But I'll never forget that concept, you know, for that simple reason. And now, when it came to the VSOP stuff, and I think it was it was Ron Carter, Tony Williams, who else was there? But they held it down. I mean, you know what I'm saying? They did exactly what you know them to do. It was just when George came through, playing the R&B, you know, it seemed like, I mean, George forced himself through the gig, of course, you know, but you could see the frustration from the audience, you know. I mean, on George's face. Mm-hmm. So, hey, now as far as like you being a formal educator, and do you teach privately also?
I tried a few times. I had some students, but it was mostly the parents who wanted the students to learn, and not the students, you know. So
okay, that's hard.
Yeah, you know. So, but to answer your question, far as teaching music, no, I don't. and primarily because I have not been taught, so I don't, I've discovered that I have some bad habits, because I'm self-taught. I wish I had, like I said, when I was at DuSable, I wish instead of being in the gym, I had been in the band room, and even on the opportunities, I had opportunities to play some drum and bugle chords, but I never did it, because in Chicago, they rehearsed in a neighborhood that, was kind of dangerous for me to be in. So for any reason, I never really learned the rudiments as I was learning. I just learned, pocket, just feel. So I just played what I felt. So what was I? What the what were we saying?
We were talking about. I was asking you if you about you being an educator.
Yeah. So I don't teach because I don't really know the specifics. I have a granddaughter now who's in middle school and she's in band, and I'm honored that she chose percussion as her instrument. But and I told her, I could show you some things, but I don't want to. I want you to learn, what this guy's teaching you, which is what I should have done, which I had done, what you do, so I let her get on my drum set and she'll come in my studio and she can play, I try to show a basic pocket, but other than that, I don't really teach. And this is another fess up moment for me, but as an educator, when I was in Chicago around 80, after disco kind of knocked all the drummers out of the studio, drum machines and stuff, I realized at that point, if I was going to continue in music, if I wanted to continue, because everything started shutting down in Chicago, I knew that I either have to go to New York or LA. And I figured if I got there, I'd have to wait tables or do something, when I got there initially. And I didn't want to do that. And at the same time, I was dealing with my wife, Legine, who was here in Atlanta. And I kept hearing things about Atlanta's Black Mecca, stuff is happening here, it's the place to be. So I kind of came down here. I just said it wasn't quite the place to be, at the time. It was a good spot, but Atlanta wasn't circulating musicians, So, like you said, you worked at Dante's, so you probably did a couple of years, or something, but
I did like 6 nights a week for 23 years.
Yeah. See, so other bass players, that wasn't the case in Chicago. In Chicago, you play a club, maybe you do a month, that owner wants you out of there, and you get somebody else in there, so there was a cycle of clubs.
But they also had that here, but it dissipated around the late 70s and the 80s, because that's the way it was here. They used to call them house gigs. And you were a house band. Yeah, you stayed in a club, a couple of weeks or a month at a time. And next thing you know, they were rotating all the musicians. That happened here. But, what I'm saying, that went down the tubes, I think, around the early 80s, when disco, like you said, when disco came.
Right.
It kind of took out all the live performers,
Yeah.
And it was like, it was really a heck of a struggle here. Because we caught it, a little bit later than you did, like in Chicago. You know what I'm saying? We were probably about a couple of years behind Chicago as far as that goes. And then all of a sudden, those places all of a sudden seemed to vanish. And I had to go back on the road. I went on the road that whole for about 10 years, just to survive as a live musician, And so by I think it was around 1990, I got back into town, and one of the bass player had died a couple of years later, and the guy asked me if I could come and do a gig for him down there. So I thought it was just for one weekend, but it turned into 23 years. And so that's good, you know what I'm saying? But I also noticed that there were no more house bands. there was no place you could go to perfect your craft as a musician at that point. You know what I'm saying? Now, strange thing is, after I came out of Dante's, I realized that opening the door, man, it was like opening up to a whole different world, because there was a couple of generations of musicians I didn't know that had come to town. I had to go, you know, reintroduce myself, I guess, to the world.
Right.
And then I decided, you know, to put Jazz Matters together. You see what I'm saying? Because at least what the initial thing was to create a platform for musicians to have that to play, you know, and
I
hone
remember
their
having
craft.
I remember having a conversation with you when you was boiling this, when this was in this infancy
Yeah,
stage.
infancy,
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I think you had just come from overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Because you went over there doing some photography, right?
Well, no, actually, I was over doing. I did the European tour of Ain't Misbehavin.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I knew
Yeah.
it was something you were
Yeah.
overseas for.
But I'm also into photography as well. But yeah.
Yeah. You do everything, man.
Yeah, I'm a Renaissance man.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing. Now, we're gonna go ahead and basically wrap this up.
Okay. But let me say this one thing before
Oh
we
yeah,
do,
go ahead.
because you asked me about teaching. I'm gonna fess up about something. I have a hard time when I walk up to a young person who's trying to get into this profession and wanting to do it, for a living. I know it's rough. What saved me was that the fact that I had a degree, because when I got here and I saw how stuff was working, uh, I tried the scene here for about 4 years, and I think I came here in 85. I applied to the school system, and went back to teaching, and I ended up retiring as an assistant principal. But, but I had that to fall back on, because, that used to always be a thing in Chicago about when you try to go buy a car, apply for credit, say, what you do? Say, well, I'm a musician. They say, well, what else do you do?
Yeah, that was worldwide.
Yeah. So the fact that I had that degree, I think, was a blessing and a curse, because had I not had the degree, I probably would have worked harder to try to, to play more. But the fact that I had the degree, I said, well, cool, well, I'll just do this and I'll play on the side, which is what I did, and I did theater for Freddie, Hendricks, YEA, for Jumanji, for Justice Theater, the Alliance, all of that stuff while I was getting 2 additional degrees, so I went to West Georgia and got my counseling degree. And I became a counselor. Then I got my assistant, my leadership certificate, and I became assistant principal, but all of this, I was doing shows at the same time. I was doing, you can't see my boy. I have a whole wall of all my shows up here, but Sophisticated Ladies, all of that stuff at Duke Ellington, at the Alliance, a lot of that stuff. But I say it all to say that I've been very reluctant to push people into this profession without a backup, and I don't know if that's good or not, but
Yeah, it's gonna pretty much come down to the individual's frame of mind, how they actually see it. Right now, it would be better that they do that. You know what I'm saying? Simply because when I was coming along, and like yourself, it was so much easier for you to go from one situation to another, as a musician. Now they don't have that option. See what I'm saying? That option is been long gone now. So they're gonna have to do something. You know what I'm saying? Right now, because I mean, let's look at what the reality of what we see out there now and what we hear on the radio. Those people aren't necessarily musicians. I mean, because everything is automated. You see what I'm saying?
Right,
So
exactly.
There's no you don't have to learn how to do none of the instrumental sounds that they record to. You see? And the majority of the people that are out there now, they're not solo musicians. They are singers, rappers, and everything else is automated behind them. So if you're lucky to get in a studio project with real musicians, then you learn a whole lot. That's a whole different skill. that you already know.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to like now, a lot of the, I would suggest that they do have something, like you said, same way you did it. You went and got the degrees.
Mm-hmm.
You went to school. So today, in my opinion, today they have a whole lot less going on,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have that. Most of
Yeah.
them don't. They wake up one morning and say a few words that sound like something behind a beat. Next thing you know,
Mm-hmm.
they're a star and making mega millions. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
still are ignorant to music.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
what we're gonna do is, like I said, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. Can you tell everybody how to get in touch with you? You have a website, or you email, anything, just to follow you and so forth,
Yeah.
and try to get in touch with you. Maybe we want to hire you as a percussionist.
Oh, okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
let's give it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, I don't have a website. I am on Facebook. You can find me, Otis Gould, at Facebook. You can just Google my name on Facebook, and But lately, I haven't been accepting friend requests.
I
but
understand.
but
Right.
I'm working on that. I at some point I might want to put out put a website together for it. But you can Google me. My name, otisgould@gmail.com, is my email. So you can always hit me that way. I don't think I'll put my phone number on this.
Nah, email is fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Email, and the fact that they know that they can search you through Facebook.
yeah,
With your name.
what I'm actually doing right now is what I'm doing with Joe, and what I would be interested in doing is trying to facilitate virtual projects.
Yeah.
So I want, so if you need a drummer, I'm not a keyboard player. I have keyboards, but I can play chords, but I wouldn't consider myself a keyboard player. But if you have a project that you need drums on, and that you can send it to me in Logic or in a form that I can listen to it and record to it, as long as I know the BPMs and things like that, then I can do that. I can work with that. And that's what I'm working on right now, is trying to set that up so that I can work virtually, not only with people here. I'm working with a guy right now in Pasadena, California. I'm waiting for him to send me a guitar track on the track that I sent him. So if this process works, I think that's going to probably be my focus. I still like playing, but like I said, I could play here and be just as happy as playing playing outside. Playing
Well, we're in a whole different environment now, and that's a must. You have to be able to do that now,
mm-hmm.
and that's just where we are. You know, so everybody out there, they can always hook up with me at yesjazzmatters.org, and get any kind of information you would need about the organization Jazz Matters. And like I said, please go and hit the donate page, and check out the Jazz Matters store while you're doing it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and wrap this up. Otis, man, thanks for showing up and giving it and letting me get all inside your business.
Yeah, I hope I didn't ramble too much. I tried to make some notes so that I wouldn't, but I
Oh,
haven't
right.
covered half the stuff I wanted to say.
But
Maybe we'll do part two.
that means we got part two coming. Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I like for you to hear some of the stuff that I did, some of the recordings that I did.
Oh yeah.
So
Now you can put those. Do you have any on YouTube?
I have some things on that. There's another project I was telling you about, the band I was playing with, the Dynamic Sounds Orchestra. We have a project out now that is really doing great. I'm getting TV placements on it and stuff like that. I'm getting royalties from it, but that's a whole nother story. I went in, and I know you're trying to wrap this up.
Oh, go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, but when I was with the Dynamic Sounds Orchestra, which was the Shylights band, we went in the studio and we produced an album. We wanted to go out on our own. We went in, produced about maybe 13, 14 tracks, got everything done, mixed in, but not finalized, and came out the studio. A month after that, the band broke up. couple of months after that, the masters got burned up in a house fire. So had nothing but reference tapes that we left with. You know, each night we leave the studio, we'll come out with reference tapes and mix different mixes. So this was like around 76 or something like that. Around 2007 or 8, I started. I'm not sure when it was, but anyway, I was just going through all of my cassette tapes, and I found it, and I listened to it. It sounded great. I said, and I was using Cakewalk at the time then, so I digitized it. It sounded pretty good. But then I got Logic, and with Logic, I was able to go in and remaster it and just put it out there. And I just put it out there just so that it would have, so the band would have a footprint. And it got picked up in London. A guy picked a single off of it and pressed the single in London. The whole project got picked up in Japan. We had distribution in Japan. I've been getting show placements, TV placements, it'll be another story. But I'm getting royalty checks. I'm getting royalty checks from that project now. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's great, and that's that other advantage you have about having material in the first place, you know, or your own stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
But the other thing is, TV placements. It's called sync licensing. I would advise if musicians out there who are working and not working, who are not working and want to work or want to do something, if you have some time, just invest some time in sync placement. That's where all the music on TV and music and movies, everything. There's a storehouse where music supervisors go to get that music. And if you can get accepted into a music library, you know, you have an option. It's no guarantee, but you have an option to do that. So that's another project I'm working on, is sync placements. All right. Now,
all right.
I'm gonna let you quit now.
All right. Thank you. Okay. But like I said, we'll pick up on that on another session. And in the meantime, man, it was great having you and everything. So we're signing off now. So we hope that everyone enjoyed Otis, and he will be back. So as far as that goes, I'm going to say goodbye.
Till next time.
All right.
All right. Hey, man, I appreciate you. Thanks a lot.
All right.
All right, man. God bless.